Hello students, and welcome to our last video on solving square root functions. Now, last video I left off with the expression square root of 2x plus 1 minus square root of x is equal to, and in our last video it was 0 over here. But now I've got a 1, and this is going to make this problem actually a lot harder than it was before. So, previously what I did was, when it was 0, what I did is I took square root of 2x plus 1 and minus square root of x is equal to 0. So my goal was to get one square root on each side. So 2x plus 1 is equal to square root of x. And that was because when I squared both sides, then it would be nice and clean and I would get rid of both of my square roots at the same time. Now, I'm not going to quite be able to do that. I'm going to get pretty close. So what I want to do now is take the simpler square root and move it to the other side. Or in other words, we want to isolate our more complicated term here. So again, we're going to add the square root x to each side. So this becomes the square root of 2x plus 1 is equal to the square root x plus 1. Excuse me. Alright, so now we want to do the exact same thing that we did before, which is we want to square both sides. But you see where I'm going with this. This is going to get very nasty very quickly. Alright, so on my left-hand side, everything is playing nicely. So I have 2x plus 1, and that's going to be equal to, now here on my right-hand side, that's where I start running into the problem. So, remember, whenever we're squaring a binomial, all we need to do is use our square. So we've got square root x. I'm going to write this in a different color. I'll use red over here. So square root x plus 1, and here I have square root x and plus 1 again. Alright, so square root x times square root x is x. Then I have square root of x and square root of x, and then I have 1. So my new expression on my right-hand side becomes x plus 2 square roots of x plus 1. Alright, excellent. Now this is something that I can almost work with. So let's see what we need to do. Well, first, I want to restart now, right? I've got a square root here, and I want to isolate it. So we just go back through our same steps again. So I want to isolate that square root, so I say minus 1 on both sides, and I have 2x is equal to x plus 2 square roots of x. And then I want, again, trying to isolate this square root. So subtract x from both sides, minus x, and I get x is equal to 2 square root x. Alright, fantastic. So, now let's see what we want to do. Well, I have this really nice square root here, and I want to break it. So let's go ahead and see if we can break it. So let's take this and square it, and square the other side. So now I have x squared is equal to 2 squared is going to be 4, and then square root of x squared is going to be x. Alright, so now I have x squared is equal to 4x, and this is now a quadratic expression, so I want to solve it like a quadratic expression. So I want to get all of my terms on one side equal to 0. So I want to subtract 4x from each side, and you get x squared minus 4x is equal to 0, and now we can factor. So here this will factor into x and x minus 4. So our two possibilities are going to be x equals 0. So our two possible solutions are, I'm going to move up a little bit and maybe draw a little barrier here. So I'm going to check solutions. And my two possible solutions that I got from factoring were x is equal to 0 and x is equal to positive 4. So now we can go back and check our solutions. So we want to say the square root of 2 times 0 plus 1 minus the square root of 0 is equal to 1. And what we'll see here is that 2 times 0 is 0, so this is the square root of 1 minus the square root of 0, and that's equal to 1. And we see that the square root of 1 is 1 minus 0 is equal to 1, and we see that this is true. So 1 is equal to 1. So that's a big old check mark right there. Alright, and then let's just plug in x equals 4 just to verify. So we know that one of our good solutions is going to be x equals 0, and then we can check our other one to see if it's extraneous. So now we'll say square root of 2 times 4 plus 1 minus the square root of 4, and we want this to be equal to 1. So this is going to be the square root of 9 minus the square root of 4, and I want this to be 1, and what we see, this is going to be 3 minus 2, and this is actually going to be 1. And so we're actually happy here as well, because 3 minus 2 is definitely 1, 1 minus 0 is definitely 1, so both of these solutions are actually valid. So my solutions are x equals 0, or x is equal to x is equal to positive 4. Alright, so if you have any questions, go ahead and shoot me an email or send me a tweet, and I will see you guys on Monday.